Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Shrek Forever After, featuring the voices of Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, Cameron Diaz, Antonio Banderas, John Cleese, Julie Andrews, Jane Lynch, Craig Robinson, John Hamm, and Walt Dorn, directed by Mike Mitchell. Now, I remember going to theaters for this thing and thinking this movie was kind of forgettable, but let's see if it's as forgettable as I remember compared to this in the third one. Let's get into that. We open the movie with King Harold, returning voice of John Cleese, and Queen Lillian, returning voice of Julie Andrews, respectively, going to Trone's Nest to visit Rumpelstiltskin, voiced by Walt Dorn, to break their daughter's curse for a trade for their kingdom after Harold signs it, briefly, I'll say, and magically break the curse until a guard comes in. It hears a story about Fiona's rescue, and Rumpelstiltskin becomes a disgrace while ripping off pages from a book after Shrek, returning voice of Mike Myers, rescued Fiona, returning voice of Cameron Diaz, from the Dark Tower. And this opening is pretentious. Meanwhile, Shrek and Fiona wake up to their kids Fergus, Fargo, and Felicia, and the same repeated schedule is happening day after day, and Shrek is tired of the same schedule happening every single day as we get to the next day, and they go to far, far away for a birthday party along with Donkey, returning voice of Eddie Murphy, and Puss in Boots, returning voice of Antonio Banderas. As their things are happening left to right, for example, a kid asks Shrek for his roar versus the three pigs eating up the first cake, and Shrek roars for real while Puss comes in with the second cake, and Shrek destroys it because his mind is everywhere. And these family man scenes are painfully ridiculous. And I would be frustrated as well if that were me, but sure. Rumpelstiltskin overhears Shrek and Fiona's conversation as he wants to go back to being a real ogre because once again he says he's an ogre. While taking a walk, and Rumpelstiltskin purposely makes an accident to his wagon and gives him a ride as he offers Shrek a date to be a real ogre again for one day. And Shrek signs a contract as he never rescued Fiona or met Donkey and Puss as he's a scary ogre again. And this is not as good a plot as the first two movies. Shrek finds Fiona is a scary ogre and is being hunted, so Shrek has to find Rumpelstiltskin but runs into a pack of wicked witches. And I remember only being one in The Wizard of Oz, but let's not talk about that. And capture Shrek and take him in a cage where he's in a cage. And Donkey is a radio, and the witches take him to the Rumpelstiltskin where he got to his own kingdom. And everybody hates Shrek there where ogres are slaves, and Shrek talks with Rumpelstiltskin and learns his family doesn't exist as he escapes with Donkey. And this animation is a complete repeat of the other animated films that came out before this film. Even Megamind, which came out the same year as this. Same goes to the first How to Drain Your Dragon film, which I love. Believe me, I do. Donkey is afraid of Shrek as he tries to refresh their friendship, but he runs away and misses his family to the point he tears up. And unfortunately, I'm not crying with Shrek as Donkey is back and joins him. And Shrek tells him he shouldn't have signed a contract with Rumpelstiltskin and learns the only way to break the contract end is true love's first kiss, like in the first film, as she left the castle and gets her blanket. And Donkey smells it as it leads to waffles, and it leads to a trap where it leads to other ogres. And we learn they can make horn noises from their ears. And I like that as a learning process, as it works fine, but not great. And the Ogre Land looks okay-ish. The thing I'm not okay with is Fiona acting like the Queen of Sparta, kicking people in the face 3 years after the movie 300. Which is not for kids, I'll say. I just got tired of Fiona beating people up in every single movie. Rumpelstiltskin telling the witches to get Shrek before sunrise, and one of the witches decides to get a bounty hunter to go after Shrek, while Fiona goes over the plan, with her fellow ogres, while Shrek comes in up with the idea to give Fiona chocolates and a frog balloon, and sees Puss is a fat cat, I'll say, and was absolutely unnecessary. But I did kind of laugh when the mouse goes to Puss's bowl of milk and says, I'll get him later. Which was in the trailer, and it cracks me up to this day. Even in this movie, Shrek tries to find a way to kiss Fiona, but she rejects, which is the plot of the movie. But I can't follow this plot as it is just awful. Rumpelstiltskin gets a bounty hunter who is a musician with a flute called the Piper, as he makes a few witches dance while Shrek needs Donkey's help, as he says to go to the course and gets some ambush done with Fiona. And while they have a good time together, as Puss watches and realizes there's more to their relationship than Fiona thinks, as Shrek tells Puss about her curse, and he tells Shrek to convince her, which is bad dialogue, because how many times must he fight for Fiona's heart? Which is what's irritating me as a movie. And this has been done so many times in this series, and it's driving me crazy. Shrek distracts Fiona while ambushing Rumpelstiltskin, and the Piper makes the ogres dance, which is terribly unnecessary, as the distraction is just terrible. Puss makes Donkey makes Donkey run like the wind, and Fiona is upset about losing her ogre friends, and Shrek asks Fiona to kiss him as that's a way to save her ogre friends. And she does, and as she asks Shrek where he was when he needed him as my heart wasn't broken, because this is sort of the reason why the kids didn't work while Rumpelstiltskin gives a message of whoever turns in Shrek gets a deal of a lifetime, which isn't a good offer to begin with. Gingy tells Shrek about the deal of a lifetime and gets an idea to turn himself over in order to save the other ogres while Shrek and Fiona are trapped together, which did frustrate me, but not as much as the third film, I'll say. Shrek and Fiona almost get killed by the dragon from the first film until Donkey and Puss are there to rescue with the other ogres. As Donkey smiles at Dragon and kisses her briefly until until Dragon briefly eats Donkey, and Puss makes Dragon spit Donkey out, and Shrek and Fiona trap the loops on the dragon, and Rumpelstiltskin almost gets away until Shrek chains him up and catches him, but Shrek is about to die and confesses his love for Fiona, and she kisses him and comes back to the birthday party, and Shrek is happy again with his life. As the story ends with Rumpelstiltskin being held in a cage and everybody celebrates, and this climax ran out of gas, like this movie did. And the two Puss in Boots movies needs to work hard at improving the character of Puss in Boots, as I don't remember the first one well enough, but the second I heard is pretty good, so we'll see. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 4.1 out of 10. The animation is repeated as the other animated films from DreamWorks and an upcoming Megamind at the time, and this story is not as good as the first two movies, but it's better than the third film, don't get me wrong. There were times the movie went in an unnecessary direction, as this movie was not as frustrating as the third film, while the plot is not original, and thank goodness this is the final chapter of Shrek's story. The movie ran out of gas, as did this series, and the two Puss in Boots movies needs to work very hard to make a better movie, as this movie shouldn't have existed at all. The third film, as this is a non-recommendation because this movie is unnecessary. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and I will be back next time with Puss in Boots. And until then, Shrek and Fiona finally lived happily ever after.